I've had a request for a PlayStation 2 game, and that is Street Fighter Alpha Anthology on the PlayStation 2. But is this one any good? Let's have a little look. From the CPS2 to the PlayStation 2 comes Street Fighter Alpha Anthology, where there are 5 games in this small compilation. Street Fighter Alpha, Alpha 2 and 2 Gold, Alpha 3 and Super Gem Fighter Minimix. The Alpha series predates Street Fighter Alpha 2 with younger looking characters, with Ken having a long ponytail which was referenced in the animated movie during flashbacks, and characters from the first Street Fighter. First of the bunch is Street Fighter Alpha, which was released in 1995 in the arcade, and would later see a home release for the Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn and the Game Boy Color. The roster here keeps former characters Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li and Sagat, and adds new characters Guy and Sodom from Final Fight, Birdie and Add-on from the original Street Fighter, and new characters Rose and Charlie, who was Guile's friend from the Air Force. The first thing you'll notice is how the animation has massively been beefed up. Character sprites are now more detailed, more animated and larger than Street Fighter 2. And you can see the difference when you compare the likes of Sagat side by side. Combat remains the same and special moves still have the same commands and effects. However, a super special meter can be filled and used in sections or the full hit in one go, depending on what you want to do. You'll notice as you progress through the game, the only boss character is Sagat at the end of the lineup. Secret bosses can be found if certain requirements are met. They are M. Bison, Akuma and Dan Hibiki. They can also be unlocked via codes. The backgrounds have the usual limited repetitive frame animations and popular landmarks such as the Colosseum in Rome and the Great Wall of China. The soundtrack and sound effects make this game stand out, and combined with the amazing graphics, this is a great game, but sadly not enough characters. Additional features are versus battle, survival mode, training and dramatic battle, where you can have 2 characters fight one opponent. A nod to the animated movie can be seen by choosing Ryu and Ken versus Bison. One year later came the release of Alpha 2, which got a release on the Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn and the Super Nintendo. In this game the list of characters have increased slightly with the bosses from the previous game, Sagat, Dan, M. Bison and Akuma. The rest of the characters have returned as well as 5 new characters. Sakura, a schoolgirl who idolises Ryu and has similar moveset. Rolento, a stage boss from Final Fight. Gen, an old geezer from the original Street Fighter. And Dalsim and Zangief from Street Fighter 2. There are only minor differences here, the additional new characters, and a custom combo system which uses your special power as a timer whilst you string a series of combos together. The background scenery is improved and seems to have more depth. The music is just as good as before, but still uses some previous tracks like the Versus screen tune. In comparison to the first Alpha game, this is just like adding DLC to it. It's a great game, and if you don't own any of the Alpha series, then Alpha 2 would be the one to get, as it's just an improvement of Alpha 1. Alpha 2 Gold is the same as Alpha 2, but now you can choose Kami by pressing start on Bison twice. Two years later came Street Fighter Alpha 3, which had home releases for the Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Game Boy Advance, Sega Dreamcast, and the PlayStation Portable as Alpha 3 Max. The character roster here has increased again, with 25 fighters to choose from. All of the roster from Alpha 2 have returned, plus a few more entries. There's Rainbow Mika, a pro wrestler, Karin, a rival to Sakura, E Honda, Vega and Blanca from Street Fighter 2, Cody from Final Fight, and Kami from Super Street Fighter 2. Fighting styles have been changed with the introduction of isms. I've never really understood these, but you can choose from A, X and V. A gives you a 3-stage super meter like the previous games where you can choose 1, 2 or 3 sections at a time. X gives you 1 power meter which can be used for special attacks or custom combo attacks. and V allows custom combos only. Each style has more depth with advantages and disadvantages to the playstyle, and this is something that needs to be found according to the player. A guard system has also been added. This meter shows underneath the player's health by the timer. This depletes the more you block. When it's empty, you're vulnerable to attacks. This will replenish when you're on the offensive side. For me, this is the best game of the three. I bought this on release for the Dreamcast, and with its raised D-pad and responsive buttons, it played perfect.
KO! You win!
Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix is more a cutesy version of the alpha games. The characters available are Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Sakura, Morrigan, Zangief, Ibuki, Shenko, Felicia and Tessa. Dan and Akuma are secret characters that can be played, and there are many cameo characters that can be seen in the background of every stage. The fighting style is very different from the mainstream games. You must collect gems in order to power up your special meters, which is shown at the bottom of the screen. Each is a different colour which can be filled up by collecting the corresponding gems. When filled, a small button combination can be performed to execute a special attack. When you attack your opponent, they will lose the gems. You need to collect these to top up your meters. Your characters will use their special attacks from the Street Fighter series, but also have some moves that have a comedic element to it. This is a fun game which can be a bit of a challenge on normal difficulty, but once you get used to it, it's not a bad game at all. But is this compilation any good? Well, considering this was released in 2006, I'd say it's a great game. With a console that could handle these games, it was nice to know you could play your favourite arcade games at home. My only issue was the controller. The PS2 D-pad buttons are separate, which makes special moves hard to do. And although it's nice you can use the analog stick, it still makes it hard with the amount of travel it has to perform the move. I bought Alpha 3 on the Dreamcast on release, and the raised D-pad was perfect for this kind of game. All moves were executed without any trouble, but for what it is, it's still a great compilation and not too expensive, and I'd give this an 85%. Thanks for watching. If for some strange reason you like my videos, please consider subscribing so I don't feel so unpopular. Do you know what I mean?